On Tuesday, November 19, 2025, Sydney's southwest woke to a quiet morning, but for three men tied to the KVT crime network, it was the day everything fell apart. At 5 a.m., William Revoker was stopped on the Great Western Highway. By 5:30 a.m., Task Force Falcon raided Eparama Navala's apartment in Edmonson Park. An hour later, George Sukarnavalu was arrested in Peakhurst. Months of surveillance and planning led to the seizure of around 40 kilograms of illegal drugs, worth $12.5 million, part of an operation allegedly supplying 55 kilograms, valued at $16.5 million. Navala, a promising rugby league player, now faces 14 serious charges, from drug supply to running a criminal group, exposing the shocking reach of organized crime in Australia. The Tuesday morning that changed everything. Tuesday, November 19, 2025, started out just like any other quiet morning in Sydney's southwest. But for three men the police say were tied to the KVT crime network, this was the morning everything collapsed. At exactly 5:30 a.m., detectives from Task Force Falcon, the team that deals with the most serious organized crime, moved in on an apartment in Edmonson Park. Their target, 28-year-old Eparama Navala. The raid was planned down to the last detail, and officers hit the unit with perfect timing. But this wasn't the only move happening before sunrise. Just 30 minutes earlier, at 5 a.m., the Raptor squad had already intercepted a vehicle on the Great Western Highway near Glenbrook. Inside that car was 28-year-old William Revoker, who was taken straight into custody. Then, at 6:30 a.m., detectives closed the net for the third and final arrest. In Peakhurst, officers took 24-year-old George Sukarnavalu into custody. Months of surveillance, planning, and intel work had all led to this moment, and when the operation finally rolled out, it unfolded like a military operation, and what police uncovered was massive. Inside the operation, officers seized around 40 kilograms of illegal drugs, worth roughly $12.5 million on the street. But the alleged scale was even bigger. Investigators believe the trio had been part of supplying about 55 kilograms, valued at $16.5 million. That's not small-time money. That's the kind of cash that builds entire criminal networks, or tears them apart when it all comes crashing down. Who was Eparama Navala? The player behind the headlines spared the arrests before the headlines, and before his name was linked to a multi-million-dollar drug bust. Eparama Navala was known for something completely different. He was actually a real rugby league talent, and that's not an exaggeration. The guy had genuine ability. He made his debut for Blacktown Workers in 2024, which alone is a big achievement for any player fighting through the ranks. In the 2025 season, he played 5 games for the Newtown Jets, and even scored 3 tries. For anyone in the NSW Cup, the second highest level of rugby league in Australia, that's impressive. What made his story even more emotional was the fact that he wasn't chasing this dream alone. His younger brother, Caleb Navala, had already broken into the big league. Caleb signed with the Manly Sea Eagles and played 9 NRL games across 2 seasons. Just think about that. 2 brothers, side by side, both rising through professional rugby league. That's the kind of story sports films love to tell. A family chasing the same dream, driven by the same passion, pushing each other forward, and that brotherly bond meant everything to them. For any rugby family, watching the sons make it to the professional stage is the kind of moment that stays with you forever. But there's a harsh contrast here that the public often forgets. Caleb Navala has no link whatsoever to the alleged crimes. While one brother was reportedly drawn into a dangerous criminal world, the other stayed focused, building a legitimate career under bright stadium lights. And now, Caleb has to carry on training, competing, showing up for his team, while constantly seeing his brother's name tied to headlines about the KVT drug network. The pressure, the judgment, the quiet questions behind closed doors. Only he knows what that truly feels like. The charges: 14 counts of serious crime. When you read through the charges against Eparama Navala, it quickly becomes clear that police aren't treating him as some small-time player. He's facing 14 counts that essentially read like a guide to major drug trafficking, 5 counts of supplying a commercial quantity of drugs, 4 counts of supplying an indictable quantity. But it doesn't stop there, and that's what makes this case stand out. He's also charged with directing the activities of a criminal group, which signals that police believe he wasn't just following orders, he was calling the shots. That's a huge allegation. This isn't simply about handing out drugs. It's about running the operation. There's also a charge for ongoing drug supply, which shows this wasn't a one-off mistake or desperate act. According to authorities, this was a planned, sustained criminal enterprise. On top of that, Navala is alleged to have handled explosives or precursors without a license, raising serious concerns about whether part of this operation involved drug production. Handling explosive precursors isn't casual. It points to a highly sophisticated, multi-layered network, and there's more. He's charged with knowingly dealing with the proceeds of crime and participating in a criminal group. To complicate things further, he faces a charge for failing to comply with a digital evidence access order. In plain terms, police claim he refused to hand over passwords to his devices. In today's digital age, that's massive. Phones and computers are goldmines for evidence, and refusing access can seriously damage a defense. When Navala appeared briefly at Liverpool local court on November 20th, his lawyer made a surprising call. No bail application was made. That's a strong signal that his legal team knew the case against him was serious enough to make release unlikely. Magistrate Claire Farron didn't mince words, describing the alleged offenses as very serious. Navala remained in custody, with his next appearance scheduled for January 14, 2026. When prosecutors were expected to serve the brief of evidence, the same approach applied to his co-accused. William Revoker didn't seek bail and was refused, while George Sukarnavalu also made no application at Sutherland Local Court. All three men are yet to enter pleas, and this case is expected to drag on for months, if not years. The backdrop: understanding the KVT Syndicate really understand how Eparama Navala ended up in this mess. You need to look at the KVT Syndicate and how it operates. This isn't just another street gang, it's a specific criminal network with its own culture, history, and strict code of conduct. KVT stands for the KVT family, a name derived from the Fijian word Kiti, which identifies native Fijians. Most of its members are young men of Fijian heritage, many raised in western Sydney suburbs like Mount Druitt and Marylands. Here's the crucial part: many of these young men came from low-income households, grew up socially marginalized, and often had tense relationships with authority. These circumstances didn't make criminals overnight, but they created vulnerability. For young men facing limited legitimate opportunities, the lure of brotherhood, protection, and money offered by gang life could be irresistible. At first, KVT was just a loose network bound by ethnic and local ties, but it quickly evolved into a more organized criminal operation once it caught the attention of the Alamedan Crime Network, one of Sydney's most powerful crime organizations. This is where the story of guys like Eparama Navala becomes clearer. A senior Alamedan figure, Masud Zakaria, played a pivotal role in turning KVT from a marginal street group into a strategic criminal tool. Zakaria saw potential in these young men. They were loyal, well-connected, and willing to take serious risks. In return, KVT members were rewarded with luxury goods, housing, and money. By the early 2020s, KVT had transformed into a tight-knit street-level enforcement arm for the Alamedans. While the Alamedan Syndicate focused on drug importation, trafficking, and international logistics, KVT handled the street-level dirty work, collecting debts, committing assaults, and moving smaller drug shipments across Sydney. But this balance was about to shift in a way that would reshape the city's criminal landscape. The power play, KVT's rise to independence. MID 2005, cracks were starting to appear. The once solid alliance between KVT and the Alamedans began to fray. Intelligence from law enforcement hinted at dissent and internal conflict, signaling a brewing power struggle in Sydney's underworld. KVT wasn't content being the foot soldiers anymore. They wanted their own slice of the empire. A splinter group, later called the Afghani Crew, emerged from KVT. This younger, more aggressive faction aimed to break free from Alamedan oversight and traditional gang hierarchies. It was a generational rebellion, one that favored violence and independence over structured control. Suddenly, KVT wasn't just a background player. They were carving out their own empire, stepping out of the Alamedan shadow, but also painting a huge target on their backs. Joseph Joe Freshvakai, the face of KVTTO, understand where KVT's power comes from. You need to know Joseph Joe Freshvakai, widely seen as the gang's leader. Vakai first came under law enforcement's spotlight in August 2021 when police intercepted a stolen Mercedes in North Sydney. Inside were three masked men, including Vakai himself. When charges were finally filed, Vakai faced conspiracy to commit murder and directing a criminal group. These weren't minor offenses. They cemented him as a key figure in Sydney's organized crime scene. For investigators, it was a stark warning. KVT wasn't wasn't a background player. They were an active, dangerous force within the Alamedin network. The Kai has been described by both law enforcement and media as charismatic and terrifying. He commanded loyalty, but he was equally capable of violence without hesitation. Detectives quickly made him the focus of long, complex manhunts. Intelligence reports linked him to multiple shootings, extortion rackets, and an illicit tobacco trade that fueled new wars across Sydney's underworld. The question nobody wants to answer: how does this happen? And here's where the story gets truly troubling. How does someone like Eparama Navala, a talented rugby league player, part of a sporting family with what seemed like a legitimate path forward, end up tied to a $16.5 million drug operation? The truth is, it's rarely one single decision. More often, it's a series of small compromises, connections formed earlier in life that are hard to break, financial pressure, or the lure of fast money that even a decent sports salary can't match. Think about it. A player in the NSW Cup makes reasonable money, but it's a fraction of what top NRL stars earn. Talent alone doesn't guarantee you'll make it to the next level. Meanwhile, in your community, there are young men pulling six figures, flashing expensive cars and watches, and earning respect on the streets. They're living a version of the dream that the traditional path promises, but often fails to deliver. The NSW Rugby League acted fast once the charges became public. They confirmed Eparama's registration had expired and made it clear he will not be considered for re-registration while charges are ongoing. Whether he ever plays rugby league again will depend entirely on the outcome of his case. And even in the unlikely event of an acquittal, the damage to his reputation and career may already be irreversible. A broader pattern: athletes and crime. Eparama's story isn't completely unique in Australian sport, although the scale and organization of this operation is exceptional. Over the years, several high-profile rugby league and NRL players have faced drug-related charges, though the sophistication of their involvement has varied. In 2024, NRL star Brandon Wackham became embroiled in a drug ring allegedly led by Fiji gym owner Sam Amin, 47. Police claimed Amin directed Wackham and content creator Nabil Alouche in supplying illicit drugs. During intercepted calls, Amin allegedly discussed his connections to Joe Freshvakai, the KVT leader, and Wackham had attended social events where these networks were formed. The pattern is clear and concerning. Young athletes with legitimate futures often get pulled into organized crime through social circles, opportunistic recruitment, or even financial pressure. Sometimes it's desperation, sometimes it's friendship, sometimes it's criminal figures deliberately targeting athletes for their visibility and resources. Strike Force Duncan and Task Force Falcon. The police response. Eparama Navala's arrest didn't just happen by chance. It was the result of months of careful, methodical police work. The operation involved Strike Force Duncan, originally set up to investigate organized criminal networks using kill cars, stolen vehicles employed in serious crimes and then destroyed to erase evidence, as well as drug supply operations. The very fact police were investigating kill cars shows the level of sophistication they were up against. These aren't tools of casual criminals. They're hallmarks of highly organized criminal enterprises. Earlier in 2025, Strike Force Duncan was moved under the broader Task Force Falcon umbrella as part of New South Wales' crackdown on violent and organized crime. By September, detectives had begun focusing specifically on the alleged drug supply activities of the three men they believed were connected to KVT. For 2 months, investigators gathered evidence, conducted surveillance, and built the case systematically and methodically. All of that preparation came together in November, when a coordinated operation brought the three suspects into custody. The culmination of months of planning executed with precision. The implications: how deep does organized crime go? What makes this case so significant isn't just the arrests. It's what it reveals about how deeply organized crime has penetrated Australian society. KVT isn't some small street gang hiding in the shadows. They're recruiting athletes, establishing connections across legitimate communities, and building sophisticated international drug networks. The alleged involvement of an NRL player, the historical pattern of rugby league athletes getting caught in drug operations, and now a promising rugby league prospect tied to a $16.5 million drug operation. These are not isolated incidents. They are part of a worrying trend: criminal syndicates actively targeting high-visibility individuals who can be exploited for resources, status, and influence. KVT has links across Fiji and Australia. involvement in major international drug trafficking, including large methamphetamine shipments intercepted from the United States, and the infrastructure to move tens of millions of dollars in drugs through local communities. What comes next? For Eparama Navala and his co-accused, the legal process is only just beginning. A brief of evidence, due in January 2026, will outline the prosecution's case in detail. From there, defense lawyers will start the complex task of challenging that evidence and building their clients' cases, given the scale of the alleged operation and the seriousness of the charges. All three men face the prospect of lengthy prison sentences if convicted. This isn't a quick case. It involves thousands of pages of intercepted communications, surveillance files, and financial records for the Naval family. This is a tragedy, regardless of the eventual outcome. One brother's career is on hold, facing the justice system. The other brother must continue his NRL career under the shadow of his siblings' alleged crimes, constantly reminded by media coverage and public attention of a family situation no one would wish for. The bigger picture. Organized crime in modern Australia. The arrest of Eparama Navala and his alleged associates is a major blow to KVT's operations in Sydney. For NSW Police and Task Force Falcon, it's proof that months of careful investigation can disrupt even the most sophisticated criminal networks. But here's the sobering truth. This single bust, while huge in scale, is just one operation against a criminal ecosystem that stretches across continents, generates billions of dollars every year, and has penetrated legitimate businesses, sporting organizations, and communities across Australia. The fact that young Fijian Australian men from disadvantaged backgrounds can be recruited into networks generating that kind of wealth points to deeper social issues, inequality, lack of opportunity, and a search for belonging. When legitimate paths to success feel blocked, the criminal world offers an alternative: brotherhood, respect, money, and status, even if it comes with prison, violence, and ruined lives. The KVT story isn't just about crime. It's about how socioeconomic marginalization, ethnic identity, and the lure of fast money combine to create circumstances where young men make choices that destroy their futures and devastate their families. The legal principle and reality. It's crucial to remember. Eparama Navala and his co-accused have not been convicted. The legal principle of presumption of innocence still stands. They are currently before the courts, and their cases will be tested through the legal system. But even without a conviction, the impact is clear. A promising sporting career is on indefinite hold. A family is in turmoil. And a community that once celebrated a genuine rugby league talent has lost him to the criminal justice system. Meanwhile, three men face the real prospect of long prison sentences. This is what organized crime in modern Australia often looks like. It's rarely the stylized violence of movies. Sometimes it looks like a rugby league player chasing a dream, playing alongside his younger brother. Until Task Force Falcon detectives hit at dawn and everything changes in an instant. The $16.5 million KVT drug bust will go down in law enforcement as a major operational success. But it also stands as a stark reminder of how deeply organized crime has penetrated Australian society, how dangerous the KVT network has become, and how even the most promising young lives can be derailed when they collide with the criminal underworld.